Hey everybody, this is Grace. In this video, I'm going to give an example of a really bad son-in-law. The type, some would say narcissistic and maybe even worse than that. Very controlling of his wife. Just very, filled with that he is the boss and he runs the show and everybody needs to know that he is the boss type. Of her, of anybody. He is the superior person, superior being in any group, and people need to recognize that. Okay, this is the kind of attitude he has. Now, it's not, in this one, it's not the mother to the woman he's married to, but her sister, who really notices. The mother seems to be clueless. The father is just more of an absent father, and they were divorced, and he just really, he paid what he needed to all the while, really didn't do much parenting at all, except if he was going to be abusive toward, the woman. Now she's a woman. He really doesn't have much to do with her. So her name is Nikki. The son-in-law is Warren. The mother is Pearl, and the aunt or aunt, depending on where how you pronounce it, her name is Margaret. So, okay, now I need to go a little bit back on history, a little bit. Basically, they live in Victorson County, Texas, which is kind of secluded from other counties. Now, this county, it's really, they have their own kind of set of rules. I can relate to that, but they have their own kind of set of rules. They don't do anything illegally, but they kind of push the limits, every once in a while. And basically, for a big part of the county, the most part of the county, the only people who can own property there, like houses or businesses or whatever, the only people are from descendants from the original settlers, going back many, many decades before. And they were very wealthy as it was, and it continued to be very wealthy as the towns developed and all that. Yeah, very wealthy. And now there was one part that they actually called, way back then, the Outlaws, a town, and that was for basically people that they had their prison there and all the other stuff that they didn't want in the rest of the county, like hotels, train station, met there. And what far too often came with like having hotels and bars and stuff like that back then. And now people could buy property there who weren't part of the other part. A little more noise than my blinker going on here. Okay, where are you gonna go? Anyway, now. Also they became wealthy because they came from wealth, old money. But some of them also made it even wealthier by being some of the first original geeks. Geeks. They used to call them geeks way back when, and they really they were really into it. And there was a whole bunch of them, hundreds of them, and they made it work for all of them. They even helped one another with their own businesses, and then they signed contracts and to help and all. Okay, and basically the geeks, they and we're talking back, like some of them knew one another from way back when they were young, if not in the same family. But some of them, they met, say, in the 1980s, around the 1990s. They're called the original group members, just to make it simple. And they would help, like I said, help one another by, helping one another in businesses. They've known one another so long, and they became very wealthy, investors and all that. Now, some of them got kicked out because some of them, they just wanted to cause problems. They kept getting in trouble. They kept causing problems for people. Within the group, they kept, they would do things like narcissistic things, like they were the most important ones, and therefore they should get more, and they wanted to control it, and it was nobody controls it. Everybody's equal in it. But no, they wanted it their way. Well, they got kicked out, and they also got kicked out of the county, of that part of the county. They could go and move to the Outlaws, but that was it. Okay, I have my face covering on, so let's see if I can do it this way. I'm waiting at a drive-thru. Place I've never tried before, like one of those little huts or islands or whatever you're going to call them in the middle of a parking. This one's Tex-Mex. Yeah, or maybe just authentic Mexican. Anyway, where was I in this story? But basically, it's going to be Aunt Margaret. She suspected Warren, the evil son-in-law, of a lot of things. Now she was basically where they lived. Like I was getting to, because they were so spread out over the county from the beginning, they kind of like were, they were claiming their land and all over the county, and very wealthy people. Well, when they would make their houses, often they would have, like one family have several houses all together on, the property, but they would be close. Some of them did it distant, but some wanted their families close. And, but eventually over, decades, for various reasons, they had to start connecting the houses. Some of it was for tax purposes, as time went by, and some of it was just need, and various reasons they would connect the houses, and eventually they become more like mansions. Okay, these were very wealthy people, and as they got more settled and time went on, they had these little mini mansions, or some of them did seem like mansions, and big farms. Some of them were farms, some of them weren't. Now, Margaret is a triplet. Margaret, Pearl, and Victor. Okay, there was a little interruption there. But anyway, they're triplets. They are triplets. And Victor just suddenly had disappeared, said he was going to go travel, and he'd be back for he left a note saying his 60th birthday. Well, since they're triplets, yeah, they found it suspicious, and so on and so forth. Well, all the while, now Margaret, she had done a lot of traveling, like earlier on when she was married. She and her husband traveled a lot. They weren't there a lot. Now their house it's Margaret's house, and Margaret has hers, and Pearl hers, and Victor theirs, but they were all connected together. But they still had their own houses, but they're connected together. And so Margaret, she felt free. She was a type of wanderer. She wanted to go, more of a nomadic type. So she did. Well, as it was, she didn't have much association with her niece, Nikki, because of all the traveling she did. She wasn't all that into Nikki's life. Plus, Nikki's dad, who, like I said, is deadbeat, wasn't a deadbeat, but he just no longer really in the picture. He didn't like Margaret. He didn't want Margaret around Nikki. It was just his way. He was a very controlling father. And as for Pearl, Nikki's mother, and well, she just kind of went along with whatever, but she was evil. She was rather histrionic, and she was, she enjoyed when, her husband would say things to Margaret that, weren't right, and she just kind of got a thrill out of it. But eventually, she got rid of, she got him out of her life. So big old drama, family drama. It's always dysfunctional family drama in all of this. But Margaret, she just stayed away. Okay, she was more, like I said, nomadic. And then she got divorced. She still traveled, and really didn't want to have much to do with him, except that she really would have liked to have more to do with her niece. Okay, Nikki. Okay, now as time went on, she, like I said, Margaret traveled a lot, even after her divorce, and she, like I said, she didn't have much to do with Nikki, but she could tell that the dad and even the mom had really changed Nikki's mind about her, and Margaret was not one to do things wrong. She was a good, decent person. But, as I said, Pearl, her sister Pearl, was quite the histrionic and the evil kind, and just liked to play the victim, and that's what she did with her husband and other people, other guys she dated and such, friends of theirs, and all this, just would play the victim and say that Margaret was the bad one, when it was actually Pearl, the one that is the histrionic, and Nikki's mother. And so Nikki believed it. Nikki, why would she distrust her mother? She felt no reason to distrust her mother on all these topics, and she became quite a little bit, but she still had a little bit of she had a little bit of influence from Margaret. That was enough to teach her a few things, that helped her not to become so much like her mother. A little bit, but not so much. There is a spectrum there. Now, when Nikki married Warren, even before then, Margaret was home more in her home. Now, like I said, the houses were connected to one another, but they each had their own house inside of it. And but they would have more dinners together. They would do that. But Margaret thought that something's not right about this Warren guy. He was actually from that town called the Outlaws. His parents were the ones who were outcast from that computer geek group, and they were more of he kind of, in front of Margaret, he would be more like himself, and that's how she knew it. Rather narcissistic and hinted a bit at the kind of psychopathic type, and she found, she could tell that things were wrong, and he'd slip and say some things, and she got the impression that he wanted to really, it was like his attitude that he was going to inherit their houses. He can't inherit because his family was kicked out, but he felt like it was his rightful place was to live in that kind of home. He still would not inherit it. His wife would, and she would be the property owner, and there was no way out of it. There's no way he could claim it because they had signed contracts, prenups kind of thing, when they got married. And but he truly believed, that it was going to be his, even though he knew better. But he just had that kind of arrogance about him. And, he was domineering and controlled his wife, Nikki. So the way he saw it, it's hers and therefore it's his. Okay. The contract said otherwise. Okay, now some would say he let it slip. Some would say he did it on purpose. He was, and plus if she were to say something to like Nikki, or she would say something to Nikki's mother, her sister, Pearl, that they wouldn't believe her. That they would think that she was starting trouble. They were really good at manipulation, and that's what they've done all around. And she would still say something. Margaret would still say something, but they didn't want to believe her. Sometimes it's denial, and sometimes it's not. But so she saw that he married, the way she saw it, the Aunt Margaret, was that Warren married Nikki for money, basically, sum it up. But she saw him do things like, that were rather abusive, things he said, the way he talked, said things in front of her, but nobody else, about how his wife minds him and all. Okay, so anyway, she knows. And how often is that the case? Somebody in the family, my experience in life is when there is someone like this in the family, like the other ones say, or, they could be good, decent people. They might not be good, decent people. But somebody comes and marries into the family, and somebody in that family, like I said, my experience, or seeing it or whatever, is that one person's going to know. Oof, what a mess over here. But yeah, one person's going to know. One person, they're going to actually, they get a kick out of it. Now, this is not 100% across the board. It can be different in different people. You know, one size doesn't fit all in this kind of thing anyway. But they can really, they get a kick out of it. That somebody knows, and they can show that somebody their superiority. That nobody, that not even their own closest family members are going to believe them, you know, the one that marries into it, over the family member, the actual blood-related family member. And they get a kick out of this type. They get a kick out of it. They get a kick out of showing, hey, look, I can rule over you. I can tell any of them anything, and no one's going to believe you. They're going to believe me over you. Now, I don't know. You know, like a son-in-law, like this kind of son-in-law, or a, what do you call that when it's the sister of the mother? Her nephew-in-law? Yeah. So, I have to think about those things. It's kind of like, what the heck is a second cousin and a third cousin removed and all this kind of crap. I mean, I know what they mean, but it's like, why did we say it that way? You know? It'll get confusing. Plus, there are in-laws on both sides of the family, you know? It's your sister's husband's family. Anyway. But yeah, my experience is that they like that. They get such a thrill out of it. Out of being able to con family members against, blood-related family members against one another. To make them say, you know, they don't believe them, they doubt them. And it doesn't have to be their spouse. It can be anybody in the family. So they can prove to themselves their superiority. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. This is part of a, if you can't tell already, hypothetical-fictional story. It is a hypothetical-fictional story, part of a series of hypothetical-fictional stories. And it's a huge one. And this is more of the dysfunctional family type with the, I mean, it's the in-laws. Mainly, it doesn't, not always. But, well, read the disclaimers in the description box below this video on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to the channel to hear more over time, or go back and watch some, just click that circular icon pop-up that pops up and join the channel. I'll talk to you on another video.